The jet sliced through the clouds at 37,000 feet, smooth as silk. Inside the luxurious Gulfstream G700, soft jazz played quietly in the background. Nathan Carter, a self-made tech billionaire and CEO of one of the largest software firms in America, leaned back in his leather seat. Beside him sat his wife, Imani, graceful, elegant, and radiating calm. This flight was supposed to be a quick trip from Seattle to New York for an important board meeting. Nothing unusual, until it was. Imani reached over for her tea, gently cradling the warm cup. Just then, the cockpit door cracked open and the pilot, Captain Harris, stepped into the cabin. His expression wasn't one of routine professionalism. It was tense, cold, and what he said next sent a chill through the air. He glanced at Imani, then muttered, "Didn't realize I'd be flying royalty today. Hope we don't get delayed by extra baggage." Nathan's brow furrowed. "Excuse me?" he asked, tone calm but sharp. Captain Harris shrugged, eyes flicking toward Imani with a smirk. "You know what I mean. Surprise someone like you travels with someone like her." The silence in the cabin was instant and deafening. Imani froze, her fingers tightening around the cup. Nathan stood slowly, the calm in his eyes now replaced with something darker. Fury, tightly controlled but unmistakable. "You just made a serious mistake," Nathan said, his voice low. "Go back to the cockpit. Now!" The pilot scoffed, turned, and walked away without a word. Imani looked at her husband, lips trembling. Did he really say that? Nathan didn't answer. He pulled out his phone, dialed his company's emergency operations line. "Put me through to aviation control. Now, I need a replacement crew, ready for mid-air transfer. And legal on standby." "But, Nathan," Imani whispered, "we're still in the air." He met her gaze. "Not for long. I'm not letting a man like that fly my plane, or breathe the same air as you, for another minute." This wasn't just about disrespect. This was personal. And Nathan Carter wasn't the kind of man to stay silent. The private jet continued its path across the sky, but inside, tension gripped every inch of the cabin. Nathan paced slowly, his mind working fast. He wasn't a man known for rash decisions, but he also never tolerated disrespect, especially not toward his wife. Imani sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, still stunned. "You're really going to fire him? Mid-flight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan stopped and looked at her. "Yes, and I'll make sure he never flies another plane again. Not one owned by my company, not one in this country." Just then, the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carter," came the voice of the co-pilot, nervously. "Is everything all right in the cabin?" Nathan picked up the handset. "No, it's not." "Prepare to divert. I've already contacted aviation logistics. A crew swap will happen as soon as we land. Find the nearest safe airport." There was a pause. Then, "Understood, sir." Imani glanced toward the cockpit. "What if Harris refuses to land early?" "He won't," Nathan said confidently. "If he does, I'll have FAA breathing down his neck before we touch the ground." Within minutes, the co-pilot confirmed they were diverting to Chicago for an emergency crew change. The mood in the cabin remained tense. Imani tried to calm herself, but the pilot's words echoed in her head like a bad dream. She had faced racism before, but never so brazen, never so unashamed. Suddenly, the cockpit door opened again. Captain Harris stood there, face twisted in irritation. "So you're pulling rank on me now? Diverting the jet? You serious?" he said, arms crossed. Nathan stood his ground. "You're relieved of duty the moment we land. Say one more word, and I'll have you escorted off in handcuffs." Harris stepped closer, voice low and angry. "This is about your wife? You're really going to end my career over some harmless joke." Nathan didn't blink. "It wasn't harmless. It was hateful. You people are so sensitive," Harris muttered. That was it. Nathan turned to the co-pilot, who had now stepped into the cabin. "You're in command from here. Lock the cockpit. Keep him out." Harris tried to protest, but the co-pilot nodded and motioned him aside. "Sir, please return to the cabin. You're no longer authorized." As the door shut behind him, Harris stood frozen, defeated and furious. Nathan sat beside Imani again, took her hand gently, and whispered, "He just lost everything, because he forgot who you are to me." The jet began its slow descent toward Chicago, and the once smooth journey had turned into something far heavier. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the co-pilot radioed the tower for an emergency crew replacement. Meanwhile, Captain Harris sat 3 rows behind Nathan and Imani, arms folded, fuming silently. No one spoke to him. No one even looked in his direction. Nathan had already alerted his legal team, his public relations manager, and the board of directors. By the time the plane touched down, everything would be in motion. This wasn't just about firing a pilot. It was about making a statement, one that couldn't be misunderstood. Imani stared out the window, her reflection a quiet reminder of the dignity she always carried. But even now, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You okay?" Nathan asked gently. She nodded, then shook her head. "I keep trying to be. I've dealt with people like him before, but I never expected it. Here, with you, in your plane." Nathan tightened his grip on her hand. "And it's exactly because it happened here that it won't go unnoticed." He thought he could say what he wanted and walk away. What if he's done this before? Imani whispered. That thought hit Nathan like a jolt. If Harris had been this bold today, what had he said to other passengers when no one with power was listening? How many women like Imani, who didn't have a billionaire husband, had endured his arrogance in silence? The seatbelt light blinked on as the jet prepared to land. Nathan looked up. "Once we're on the ground, I want a full investigation. His flight logs, cabin recordings, passenger complaints. Everything." "Yes, sir." His assistant texted back instantly from the company's air operations division. The jet touched down smoothly, tires screeching softly against the runway. Ground vehicles were already in position. An airport official and 2 security officers waited near the hangar. The moment the doors opened, Harris stood up, trying to push forward, but one of the officers blocked his path. "You'll need to wait, sir. There's an order from the jet owner." Harris scoffed, but he was trapped now, surrounded by protocol he couldn't control. Nathan and Imani stepped out calmly. Flashing cameras and airport personnel greeted them. The world would know soon enough what happened in the sky, and Nathan intended to make sure no one ever forgot it. Outside the jet, the Chicago air was cool and brisk. Nathan held Imani's hand as they descended the stairs. 2 black SUVs waited on the tarmac, engines humming softly. A new flight crew stood near the second jet that had been arranged for the rest of their journey. But before anything else, Nathan turned to the airport security official. "I want him off that plane. Now," he said, nodding toward Harris still inside the aircraft. The official gave a curt nod. Moments later, the 2 officers boarded the jet. Harris erupted in protest the second they approached. "You can't do this." "I'm the captain," he shouted, voice echoing inside the cabin. "Not anymore," one of the officers replied. "You've been formally relieved of duty." As he was escorted off the plane, Harris's arrogance gave way to disbelief. He looked around at the waiting staff, the cameras, the flashing lights. His career, years in the making, was unraveling in real time. Nathan didn't spare him a glance. Imani, however, stood tall, her eyes meeting Harris's for just a second. There was no anger in her face, no revenge, just a quiet strength that seemed to make him shrink even more. Without a word, she turned and got into the SUV. Inside the vehicle, Nathan's phone buzzed. Media picked up the story. His assistant said over speakerphone, "Someone leaked it from the ground crew. It's already trending." Nathan didn't flinch. "Let it trend." "But it's going viral fast," she added. "You want PR to step in? Release a statement." Nathan glanced at Imani, then back at the phone. "Make it clear. Our company stands against racism in every form, even when it comes from someone wearing a uniform." There was silence for a beat. Then his assistant said, "Understood." As the SUV pulled away, Imani finally spoke. "You didn't have to go this far, Nathan." He turned to her, eyes steady. "Yes, I did. If people like him can humiliate others midair, imagine what they do on the ground when no one's watching." She exhaled slowly, leaning into him. "Thank you." He wrapped an arm around her, the city skyline coming into view through the tinted glass. But behind the calm exterior, Nathan's mind was already 10 steps ahead. He wasn't done. Not yet. Now it was time to make sure this never happened again. To anyone. By the time Nathan and Imani reached their downtown hotel suite, the story had exploded across national news outlets. Headlines flashed on every screen. CEO fires pilot mid-flight after racist remark toward wife. Social media was ablaze with reactions. Some shocked, some applauding, some outraged. Nathan stood by the window, watching the streets below. Imani scrolled through the online posts, quietly absorbing the flood of support and hate. "People are calling you everything from a hero to a tyrant," she said, a trace of a smile on her lips. Nathan didn't turn. "Let them. I didn't do this for praise." A knock came at the door. Nathan opened it to find his legal counsel, Dana Brooks, holding a tablet and a stack of documents. She stepped inside swiftly. "We've reviewed Harris's flight history," she said, wasting no time. "There are prior complaints, mostly verbal reports. Female passengers feeling uncomfortable. Nothing that stuck." Nathan's jaw tightened, because no one took them seriously. Dana nodded. "Until now." Imani sat forward. "Can we make that public?" "We will," Dana replied. "But there's more. He's part of a pilots' union. They're already pushing back, saying your response was excessive and emotionally charged." Nathan scoffed. "It was both, and absolutely justified." "We'll need to prepare for possible legal blowback," Dana warned. "Wrongful termination, discrimination, defamation. He may try everything." Nathan didn't hesitate. "Let him. I want it all on the record." Dana gave a small smile. "Already ahead of you. We've got full audio from the cockpit and cabin mics." His words were clear. "There's no spinning it." "Good," Nathan said. "Then I want to use this moment, not just for us, but for every person who's had to sit in silence." Imani looked up at her husband, eyes filled with something deeper than pride. "You're turning this into more than just justice." He nodded slowly. "It has to be." That night, Nathan drafted a letter to the FAA, requesting a mandatory ethics and bias review program for all pilots operating under his company's aviation contracts. Attached were transcripts, witness statements, and a personal note from Imani. IT was the start of something bigger, and the world was watching. Within 48 hours, the ripple effect of the incident had become a wave. Major networks aired segments about the confrontation. Civil rights leaders applauded Nathan's swift action. Airline CEOs held emergency meetings about bias training. The pilots' union issued a cautious statement, defensive, yet clearly shaken. But what resonated most was Imani's open letter, posted quietly on her personal blog. "I didn't ask to become a symbol," she wrote. "I only wanted to feel safe at 37,000 feet. But when the sky doesn't feel safe, where do we go?" My husband acted, not because he's a CEO, but because he's a man who refuses to let silence be our answer. The post went viral in less than 6 hours. Nathan sat beside Imani in their suite, watching the comments roll in. Stories flooded in from everyday passengers, black women, immigrants, even flight attendants, sharing moments where they'd been dismissed, belittled, or quietly insulted at 30,000 feet and had said nothing. Now, they were speaking up. The FAA responded to Nathan's letter faster than anyone expected. A representative requested a formal meeting to discuss expanding anti-discrimination policies across all chartered aviation services. Nathan accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, Harris had officially been terminated, not just by Nathan's firm, but blacklisted by several private aviation companies. His defiance had quickly turned to desperation. He released a shaky video online, claiming he was misunderstood, but the damage was done. The world had heard his words, unfiltered, unprovoked, and undeniable. Nathan watched the clip once, then deleted it. He turned to Imani, who was staring out the window, deep in thought. "Do you regret how it all played out?" she asked. He reached for her hand. "Only that you had to go through it all." She nodded slowly. "But maybe this needed to happen. Maybe it's not just about us." "It never was," Nathan said. The following week, at a national aviation conference, Nathan took the stage. With Imani in the front row, he spoke clearly and firmly. We fly above the clouds to rise above ignorance. If we allow prejudice to sit in our cockpits, we've already crashed. That ends now. The crowd stood in silence, then erupted in applause. It had started as a personal insult, but it ended as a movement. And in the sky where it began, something better was finally taking flight.